The morning light of 3 different suns streamed through the massive crystal windows of the Galactic Arbitration Court on Nexus Prime. The building itself was a marvel of alien engineering, walls that seemed to breathe with their own inner light, floors that adjusted their texture based on the species walking across them, an air that automatically filtered itself to accommodate the breathing requirements of hundreds of different life forms. Park Minho straightened his black suit jacket as he walked through the corridors alongside his partner, Kim Da-yoon. The hallways were filled with the strangest collection of beings he had ever seen, even after 3 years of practicing interstellar law. A group of what looked like walking flowers drifted past, their petals shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. Behind them, a massive creature that resembled a living boulder rolled along on hidden appendages, leaving no trace on the adaptive flooring. "Remember," Kim Da-yoon whispered as they approached Courtroom 7, "keep your voice down and move slowly. The Altarians are known to be jumpy around mammals." Park Min-ho nodded, though he felt frustrated by the constant need to suppress his natural behavior. Back on Earth, his passionate courtroom style had won him dozens of high-profile cases. Here in space, he felt like he was practicing law while wearing invisible chains. The courtroom door slid open with a soft whisper, revealing a space that defied human understanding of architecture. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, with floating platforms at different levels to accommodate species that preferred different gravitational orientations. Bioluminescent strips along the walls pulsed gently, providing light that somehow felt comfortable to every eye in the room. Judge Valtheri dominated the center of the space, his crystalline body standing nearly 12 feet tall. His transparent form caught and scattered the ambient light, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the courtroom like living art. When he moved, tiny musical notes seemed to ring in the air, a side effect of his silicon-based biology. "Fascinating, Kim," Do-yoon murmured. "I've read about crystalline physiology but never seen it in person. They're basically living computers made of mineral." The human legal team took their seats at a table that had automatically adjusted its height and surface texture to accommodate their biology. Around them, the courtroom filled with an incredible variety of alien life. The voidlings caught Park Min-ho's attention immediately, beings that looked like captured pieces of deep space, floating in spherical containers filled with exotic gases. Their forms shifted constantly, sometimes resembling galaxies, other times looking like contained thunderstorms. The hive speakers were equally bizarre, resembling massive praying mantises with additional limbs that ended in complex manipulator organs. They communicated through rapid clicking sounds and chemical pheromones that the courtroom's translation system converted into understandable speech. Every few minutes, they would pause their conversations to groom their antennae with mechanical precision. But it was the flower people that truly amazed Kim Da-yoon. These beings moved like underwater plants, their colorful petals opening and closing in response to emotions or environmental changes. Their environmental suits were marvels of biotechnology, providing them with the exact atmospheric mixture they needed while allowing their natural beauty to shine through transparent membranes. The rocklings sat in perfect stillness, their silicon-based bodies nearly indistinguishable from carved statues. Only the occasional shift of their geometric eyes or the slow repositioning of their crystalline appendages revealed that they were alive at all. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Valtheri," announced the court clerk, a floating orb of blue energy that spoke in a voice like singing crystal. The assembled beings rose, floated or activated hovering mechanisms depending on their species. Judge Valthari's voice filled the courtroom like a perfect musical chord. The sound waves actually visible as they rippled through his translucent body. The court recognizes Earth Mining Consortium versus Altarian Trade Federation. Case number 847,293,561. This tribunal will address allegations of contract violation and fraudulent representation in mineral extraction rights for the Kepler 442 system. Park Min-ho felt his jaw clench as the Altarian prosecutor rose to present their case. The being was beautiful in an otherworldly way, resembling a living aurora with shifting colors flowing through a vaguely humanoid form. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Honored judge and esteemed jury," the prosecutor began. We present evidence that the Earth Mining Consortium has engaged in systematic deception regarding the geological surveys of Kepler 442b. They have fabricated data, hidden dangerous mineral deposits, and put entire ecosystems at risk for profit. Accusations hit Park Min-ho like physical blows. The prosecutor wasn't just questioning business practices, they were attacking human character, suggesting that Earth's corporations were inherently dishonest and couldn't be trusted in galactic commerce. Kim Do-yoon placed a restraining hand on her partner's arm as she felt his muscles tense. She could see the familiar signs of his courtroom passion building, but here, in this alien environment, she knew they had to be careful. The Altarian prosecutor activated a holographic display, showing what they claimed were falsified geological reports. The data swirled in three-dimensional complexity, with sections highlighted in accusatory red. Furthermore, the prosecutor continued, we have evidence that humans deliberately concealed the presence of unstable quantum minerals. Could have caused dimensional rifts throughout the system. Their reckless mining operations nearly destroyed 3 habitable worlds. That was the breaking point. Park Min-ho had spent 2 years overseeing those surveys personally. Every measurement had been triple-checked. Every safety protocol followed to the letter. The suggestion that he and his team had risked alien lives for profit was not just wrong, it was an insult to everything he stood for, as both a lawyer and a human being. That's absolute nonsense, Park Min-ho roared, his fist coming down on the table with the full force of human indignation and Earth-evolved muscle density. The sound that erupted was beyond anything the galactic courtroom had been designed to handle. The reinforced composite table, engineered to support the massive weight of silicon-based rocklings, cracked down the middle with a noise like a thunderclap. The sonic boom that followed was devastating. Judge Valthari's crystalline form, perfectly tuned to harmonic frequencies, couldn't withstand the chaotic sound waves. His molecular structure began to resonate and fracture, rainbow light scattering in all directions as his body literally shattered like a massive wind chime in a hurricane. The voidlings' containment spheres, designed to maintain perfect environmental balance, failed catastrophically as the sonic disruption interfered with their delicate atmospheric processors. Emergency systems triggered, sending half of them into protective stasis while others escaped their containers. Their dark energy forms screaming in frequencies that human ears couldn't detect, but that sent every other species in the courtroom into panic. The flower people's environmental suits ruptured like soap bubbles. The pressure waved too much for their delicate biomembranes. Toxic gases began leaking as their life support systems failed, while their petal forms closed tight in protective reflex, cutting off their ability to process light and nutrients. 3 of the hive speakers collapsed instantly, their sensitive auditory organs overloading from the sonic assault. Green fluid leaked from their compound eyes as their nervous systems struggled to process the overwhelming sensory input. Even the seemingly indestructible rocklings showed stress fractures along their geometric surfaces, their internal resonance chambers disrupted by the unexpected frequency bombardment. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the building.
Yes.
As medical drones swarmed into the courtroom, the automated systems designed to detect weapons and explosives couldn't understand what had happened. Security breach. Security breach. The warnings echoed. Weapons discharge detected in courtroom 7. Evacuating all personnel immediately. Kim Do-yoon stood frozen in horror as chaos erupted around them. Alien beings writhed in pain, some bleeding strange-colored fluids, others flickering in and out of visible spectrum as their biology failed to cope with what had just happened. Medical teams rushed to treat beings suffering from acoustic trauma and kinetic displacement syndrome, conditions she had never heard of before. We didn't bring any weapons, Park Min-ho protested, genuinely confused by the devastation he had caused. But his words, spoken at normal human volume, only sent more aliens fleeing in terror. Within minutes, the entire courtroom had been evacuated, except for the 2 humans, who stood alone amid the wreckage of what had been a peaceful legal proceeding. The cracked table, the scattered fragments of Judge Valthari's form, in the emergency containment fields around leaking alien life. Support systems painted a picture of destruction that neither human could fully comprehend. Park Min-ho looked at his hands in disbelief. It only expressed frustration, something he had done thousands of times in Earth courtrooms. How could a simple gesture cause such devastation? How could beings advanced enough for interstellar travel be so fragile? As security teams in full hazmat gear finally entered to escort them out, both humans began to realize that their species might be fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization. The question was, what could possibly be done about it? The emergency meeting room on Nexus Prime's administrative station was unlike anything humans had ever designed. The walls curved in impossible angles, creating a space that seemed larger inside than outside. Gravity fields shifted smoothly throughout the room, allowing flying species to hover comfortably while ground-based beings sat normally. The air itself shimmered with translation particles, ensuring that every click, whistle, and harmonic frequency could be understood by all present. Chief Court Administrator Nixolin floated near the center of the room, her jellyfish-like form pulsing with nervous bioluminescence, her tentacles, each as thick as a human arm, writhed with barely contained anxiety as she reviewed the disaster reports scrolling across her organic display membranes. "The media coverage has been challenging," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of someone who hadn't slept in days. "The Galactic News Network is calling it the day justice shattered. 3 different species have filed formal complaints with the Interstellar Safety Commission." Security Chief Kraktos shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced chair. His species, the Cathara, resembled massive hermit crabs that had evolved to wear technological shells instead of natural ones. The stress fractures running across his armored carapace told the story of his emergency response to the courtroom disaster. Even his protective shell, designed to withstand asteroid impacts, had been damaged by the shockwaves from a single human emotional outburst. "The damage goes beyond the courtroom," Kraktos reported, his voice amplified through speakers built into his shell. The sonic boom triggered emergency protocols throughout the station. 17 different species experienced varying degrees of trauma. The Whisper folk are still in induced comas because their nervous systems can't process what they experienced. Dr. Yashandra, the court's chief xenobiologist, activated her research station with a gentle wave of her forearms. Her species, the analytical minds, had evolved specifically for scientific observation and data processing. Her large, multifaceted eyes could see across dozens of spectrums simultaneously, while her brain could process information at speeds that made quantum computers seem slow. "I've been analyzing human biology for the past 72 hours, she announced, her clinical tone barely concealing her fascination and horror. "The results are ... unprecedented." The holographic display that materialized above the conference table showed a detailed scan of human physiology. To the assembled aliens, it looked like a blueprint for a biological weapon. "Observe the skeletal structure," Dr. Yashandra continued, highlighting Park Min-ho's bone density readings. "Human bones are composed of calcium phosphate in a crystalline matrix that's 3 times denser than standard galactic vertebrate species. Their muscle fibers are arranged in complex overlapping patterns that can generate explosive force." Flower person named Petal Singer swayed nervously in her mobile garden pod. Her species communicated through chemical releases and color changes. But the translation system converted her distress into audible words. "How is such density possible? Their homeworld must be enormous." "That's exactly the problem," Dr. Yashandra replied, switching the display to show Earth's specifications. "Humans evolved on what we would classify as a Class 12 death world. Gravity 2.3 times galactic standard. Atmospheric pressure that would crush most of our respiratory systems. And weather patterns that include destructive electrical storms and frozen precipitation." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. A Class 12 death world was theoretical. No one had imagined that complex life could actually evolve under such extreme conditions. "The predator-prey evolutionary pressure is equally extreme," the xenobiologist continued. "For millions of years, humans were both hunters and hunted. They developed persistence hunting techniques, where they would literally run their prey to death over dozens of kilometers. Their bodies are biological machines optimized for endurance, strength, and survival. Bubble mind, a gaseous intelligence, contained in a crystalline sphere, vibrated with concern. But surely their civilization has evolved beyond such primitive behavior. That's where it gets interesting, Dr. Yashandra said, pulling up recordings from human educational institutions. Human legal training actually amplifies their natural intensity. They're taught to be passionate, forceful, and physically demonstrative. On Earth, lawyers are expected to pound tables, raise their voices, and use dramatic gestures to emphasize their points. The assembled beings exchanged horrified glances as they watched video footage of human courtrooms. What looked like normal advocacy to humans appeared to be scenes of controlled violence to alien eyes. When Park Min-ho struck that table, Dr. Yashandra explained, he generated approximately 1,200 pounds of kinetic force. That's equivalent to a small explosive device. The sonic frequency reached 180 decibels, enough to cause permanent damage to most galactic auditory systems. Chief Prosecutor Willanesh, whose tree-like form had been swaying with increasing agitation, finally spoke. Are you telling us that humans are living weapons? Unintentionally, yes, Dr. Yashandra confirmed. But it's not just their physical capabilities. Their electromagnetic fields disrupt nebuloid consciousness patterns. Their vocal cords can produce subsonic frequencies that trigger panic responses in pre-evolved species. Even their breathing releases chemical compounds that are mildly toxic to gossamer wings. Security Chief Kraktos activated his own display, showing security footage from the past year. We've reviewed every case involving human legal representatives. The pattern is undeniable. The first video showed human attorney Lee Hyun-woo during a contract dispute. When he raised his voice to make a point during cross-examination, half the jury fled the courtroom. The Etherian witnesses went into defensive shell mode, while the misbeings dispersed entirely, requiring emergency reconstitution. He thought he was speaking at normal volume, Kraktos explained. To him it was just emphasis. To the jury, it sounded like a predator's roar. The next recording showed human lawyer Nam Soo-jin greeting an alien client with a handshake. Etherian's delicate carapace cracked audibly from the pressure, requiring immediate medical attention. She was being friendly, Dr. Yashandra noted. Human social bonding rituals involve physical contact that can cause structural damage to more delicate species. The most disturbing footage came from a recent civil case. Human attorney Cho Min-jun had smiled at the jury during his closing argument. The recording showed Pixilian jurors fainting, Hive speakers entering defensive postures, and the judge declaring a mistrial due to predatory intimidation. He was expressing confidence and warmth, Dr. Yashandra explained. But the display of teeth triggered evolutionary fear responses in 17 different species. To them, it looked like a carnivore preparing to feed. Administrator Nick Solin's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep purple, indicating extreme stress. How many incidents total? 47 confirmed cases in the past 12 months, Kraktos reported. Property damage, medical emergencies, psychological trauma, and 3 judges who have refused to hear any more human cases. The Galactic Bar Association has received dozens of complaints from attorneys who refuse to represent clients in human-involved litigation. The xenobiologist pulled up another display showing comparative emotional responses. When humans experience strong emotions, their heart rate increases, blood pressure rises, and they release stress hormones. 2 species with enhanced predator detection, these changes register as threat-level aggression. So even when they're happy or excited, Willanesh realized with horror, they appear dangerous to us. Precisely, and their legal training makes it worse. Human advocacy is based on emotional connection, passionate argument, and physical presence. Everything that makes them effective in their own courts makes them terrifying in ours. The investigation committee sat in stunned silence as the full scope of the problem became clear. Humans weren't just different, they were biologically incompatible with galactic civilization. Their very existence as passionate physical beings turned every legal proceeding into a potential disaster. There's one more thing, Dr. Yashandra added quietly. Psychological analysis of the human defendants shows they're genuinely confused by our reactions. They have no idea they're causing trauma. From their perspective, they're being remarkably restrained. Administrator Nix Olin's tentacles writhed with the weight of impossible decisions. So what are our options? We can't exclude humans from the legal system that violates every principle of galactic justice. But we can't continue to traumatize our own people either. The room fell silent as each being contemplated the implications. How do you provide equal justice to a species whose very presence terrorizes everyone else? How do you protect the rights of beings who are walking weapons simply by existing? The answer, when it came, would change the nature of galactic law forever. The Grand Assembly Chamber of the Galactic Judicial Council was a marvel that had taken 3 centuries to construct. It's built into the heart of a hollowed-out asteroid. The chamber could accommodate every known form of sapient life in the galaxy. Floating platforms adjusted their gravity and atmosphere for aerial species, while the main floor shifted its composition to support beings ranging from liquid mercury entities to living mountains of crystallized thought. Today, however, the chamber buzzed with an energy that had nothing to do with its advanced technology. Fear and confusion filled the air as beings who had never experienced genuine terror shared their traumatic encounters with humanity's legal representatives. Chief Justice Quantolic floated at the center of the chamber, his ancient form resembling a living constellation. His species, the Star-Touched, had guided galactic civilization for over 10,000 years. They existed as pure energy contained within geometric force fields. Their wisdom accumulated across millennia of peaceful conflict resolution. Never in his existence had he faced a problem like this. The Council recognizes Judge Mordix of the Andromedian Circuit, Quantolock announced, his voice resonating through dimensional frequencies that every species could understand. Judge Mordix drifted forward, her cloud-like form shifting through colors that indicated deep distress. Her species, the Mood Clouds, were empathic beings whose emotional states were visible through chromatic changes. Right now, she was cycling through nervous purples, anxious yellows, and fearful whites. 3 months ago, I presided over the Titan mining case, she began, her voice carrying like wind through autumn leaves. Human plaintiff Choi Sujin was giving testimony about her company's safety protocols. She seemed calm, professional, even gentle by her species' standards. The chamber fell silent as judges leaned forward to hear every word. During her testimony, she gestured to emphasize a point about emergency procedures. To her, it was probably just a small hand movement. But the air displacement? Mordix flickered deep purple with remembered trauma. 3 Pixelian witnesses were literally blown off the witness stand. They tumbled through the air like leaves in a hurricane. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Pixelians were fairy-like beings no larger than a human hand, with gossamer wings and delicate bone structures. Being blown around by air currents could easily kill them. All 3 were hospitalized for gravitational displacement syndrome, Mordix continued. One suffered wing damage that required surgical reconstruction. They thought they were under attack by some invisible weapon. Judge Keshmaran, a graceful insectoid whose species resembled living flowers with crystalline petals, clicked her mandibles nervously as she prepared to speak. Her antennae twitched with remembered anxiety. The Yunji-Hu incident was personally traumatic, she admitted, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. He had been found guilty of minor contract violations, nothing serious, just a fine and community service. When I announced the sentence, he looked directly at me and smiled. Several beings in the chamber shuddered. Humans might think of smiles as friendly, but 2 species that had evolved from prey animals. The sight of exposed teeth was deeply threatening. The display of dental structures triggered an involuntary molting response, Judge Keshmaran explained. My exoskeleton began shedding immediately. I was bedridden for 3 weeks while my new carapace hardened. The medical team said it was the most severe stress molting they had ever documented. The horror stories continued as judge after judge shared their encounters with human legal proceedings. Judge Thelvarax, whose species resembled graceful sea anemones with tentacles that could manipulate matter at the molecular level, described the water bottle incident that had become legendary among court staff. Human attorney Bai Minjun was presenting his closing argument in a complex trade dispute. Thelvarax recounted, his tentacles writhing with agitation. The proceedings had been going well. He was speaking at acceptable volume levels. moving slowly, everything according to protocol. Then he opened a bottle of water. The chamber was deadly quiet now, hanging on every word. The pressure release from the container made a small popping sound. Then he tilted his head back and drank. To us, it looked like feeding behavior. The exposed throat, the swallowing motions, the satisfied expression afterward. 17 herbivorous species went into immediate panic mode. Judge Thelverak's S-color shifted to distressed amber. The grass whisperers started screaming about predator feeding display. The gentle grazers activated their herd flight instincts and trampled to court clerks trying to escape. We had to evacuate the entire courtroom and bring in trauma counselors. But perhaps the most disturbing testimony came from Judge Velenoth, whose crystalline form still bore the decorative cracks from her own encounter with human intensity. Her voice carried harmonic overtones that spoke of deep psychological scarring. The Nam Tae-hyung case nearly ended my career, she admitted. He was defending a human colony's right to expand their agricultural zones, a relatively simple case. But the implications were significant for human-alien relations. She paused, her crystalline surface reflecting rainbow patterns of remembered stress. During his closing argument, Nam Tae-hyung became passionate about his client's rights. He told me later that he was being extremely careful to keep his voice at what he called indoor volume, what humans consider polite conversation levels. The assembled judges waited with growing dread for the conclusion. The sonic levels registered at 95 decibels, equivalent to a Vorthan war cry or a screamer bird attack call. I experienced what human doctors might call a nervous breakdown, but for my species, it manifested as structural instability throughout my molecular matrix. Chief Justice Quantalakis' energy patterns shifted to deep concern as he absorbed the testimonies. Each story painted the same picture: humans who thought they were being careful and restrained, but whose very existence caused trauma to species that had never experienced such biological intensity. The debate that followed was unlike anything in the Council's history. Some judges argued for complete exclusion of humans from galactic courts, while others insisted that equal justice required accommodation rather than segregation. Judge Mordix flickered between angry reds and fearful yellows as she addressed the assembly. In 3 centuries of judicial service, across 17 different planetary systems, I have never encountered a species that can cause psychological trauma simply by existing at their normal energy levels. How do we provide fair trials when the defendant's mere presence sends witnesses into medical shock, as humans don't mean harm? Judge Keshmaran pointed out, her clicking sounds translated into gentle tones. Our psychological analysis shows they're genuinely confused and distressed by our reactions. From their perspective, they're being remarkably controlled. Controlled? Judge Thelverak's S-tentacles writhed in disbelief. The human attorney who caused the water bottle panic said he was trying to stay hydrated quietly. If that's their idea of quiet, what does their normal behavior look like? The testimonies had revealed the core of the problem. Humans weren't just physically different. They operated at energy levels that were fundamentally incompatible with the rest of galactic civilization. Their restraint was still overwhelming to species that had evolved in gentler environments. Chief Justice Quantalek finally raised his shimmering appendages for silence. His ancient wisdom had guided the galaxy through countless crises, but this challenge was unlike any he had faced before. We stand at a crossroads, he announced, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. We can exclude humans from our courts, violating every principle of equal justice we hold sacred. We can sedate them into compliance, which they rightfully refuse as inhumane. Or we can create separate human-only courts, fragmenting the unified legal system that has brought peace to our galaxy. The chamber fell silent as the weight of the decision pressed down on every being present. How do you provide justice to a species whose very existence terrorizes everyone else? How do you protect both human rights and alien safety? The back of the chamber came a voice that would change everything. There may be one solution, the gruff voice announced, but you're not going to like it. All eyes turned toward the speaker, wondering what possible answer could resolve this impossible dilemma. The voice that cut through the chamber's tension belonged to someone who looked like he had walked straight out of a war zone. Sergeant Voxhammer stood at the back of the assembly. His massive form, a patchwork of original biology and military-grade cybernetics. Half his face was covered by a sophisticated breathing apparatus, while one arm had been completely replaced. With a mechanical limb that hummed with barely contained energy, his species. The Kithran Warcast were already among the most physically imposing beings in the galaxy. Reinforced bone plating showed through gaps in his armored hide. Neural interface ports glowed along his skull. His remaining organic eye burned with the intensity of someone who had seen too much combat. Sergeant Voxhammer, Chief Justice. Quantalic acknowledged his energy patterns, shifting to respectful recognition. Your presence here is ... unexpected. The massive warrior stomped forward, each footstep causing minor vibrations through the chamber floor. His mechanical voice modulators were a necessity without them. His natural vocal cords could produce sounds that would rupture the hearing organs of half the species present. 3 tours with human defense forces during the Outer Rim conflicts, Voxhammer announced, his words carefully modulated to avoid causing sonic damage. Fought alongside humans Kim Jae-soon and Park So-young during the Kepler Station siege. Watched a human squad hold off an entire destroyer-class battle fleet for 6 hours while civilian transports evacuated. The assembled judges shifted nervously. The Outer Rim conflicts were legendary, desperate battles against mechanical invaders, where entire star systems had been reduced to scrap metal and radiation. You see humans as a problem, Voxhammer continued, activating a holographic display unit built into his arm. Wrong approach. Their homeworld spent millions of years trying to kill them, so they adapted. Made themselves tougher, stronger, more resilient than anything else in the galaxy. The hologram showed footage from the Kepler Station siege, scenes of desperate combat in the vacuum of space. Human soldiers in powered armor moved through environments that would instantly kill most galactic species, their movements fluid and coordinated despite the extreme conditions. Watch this, Voxhammer commanded, highlighting a specific sequence. Kim Jae-soon, punching through a reinforced blast door. The footage showed a human marine approaching a sealed barrier that was designed to withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. Without hesitation, Kim Jae-soon drew back his fist and struck the door with everything he had. The reinforced metal crumpled like paper, creating a hole large enough for wounded Etherean civilians to escape through. Door was rated for 50,000 pounds of impact force, Voxhammer explained. Kim didn't even realize he'd done something impossible. Asked me later if blast doors were always that flimsy. That's when I understood humans don't know they're dangerous. Keshmaron's antennae twitched nervously. What exactly are you proposing, Sergeant? Armored Bailiff protocol, Voxhammer stated firmly. Instead of trying to weaken humans or hide from them, we strengthen ourselves. Specially trained court officers equipped with kinetic dampeners, sonic absorption gear, and electromagnetic shielding. The concept sent ripples of surprise through the chamber. Rather than limiting human participation, this approach would enhance alien protection to handle human intensity. Without needing medical attention, Voxhammer continued, bailiffs, who can absorb the impact when a human lawyer gets passionate about justice. The armor looked like something from a military arsenal full body. Suits with integrated force field generators, sonic dampening systems, and kinetic absorption matrices. We conducted preliminary tests, Voxhammer announced, switching to recorded footage of a mock courtroom. Prototype bailiff armor successfully contained the effects when human test subject Lee Minesio became frustrated during questioning. The recording showed a human woman in a simulated legal proceeding. As the questioning grew more intense, Lee Minesio's emotional responses escalated. She gestured emphatically, raised her voice, and even slammed her hand on the table in frustration. Around her, 3 armored bailiffs stood calmly, their equipment visibly absorbing and redirecting the energy that would normally have caused chaos. No injuries, no evacuations, no trauma, Voxhammer noted with satisfaction. The bailiffs absorbed the sonic impact. The kinetic dampening fields contained the table strike, and the electromagnetic shielding prevented disruption to sensitive alien nervous systems. On the technical specifications, the kinetic dampening fields could theoretically absorb human movement energy before it reaches dangerous levels. Sonic shields would filter out harmful frequencies. The power requirements alone Less than the medical bills were already paying, Administrator Nick Solon interrupted, her tentacles writhing as she calculated costs. 17 hospitalizations? From the Park Min-ho incident alone cost more than a full bailiff unit would. Judge Mordix flickered curious blues and greens. Show us the complete test scenario. The hologram expanded to display a full legal proceeding. Human attorney An Soo-jin was defending a client in a complex interstellar trade dispute. As she presented her case, her natural human passion emerged. She gestured emphatically to emphasize points, raised her voice during crucial arguments, and moved around the courtroom with typical human energy. But this time, instead of chaos, something remarkable happened. The alien judge and jury remained calm throughout the proceedings, protected by the presence of the armored bailiffs. The armor doesn't just protect us, Foxhammer explained, highlighting the jury's reactions. It lets humans be human. Watch the jury's responses when they're not afraid. They actually appreciate human passion and conviction. The footage showed alien jurors leaning forward with interest. Instead of recoiling in fear, when An Soo-jin delivered her closing argument with characteristic human emotion, the crystalline judge nodded approvingly, rather than shattering from sonic overload. Chief Justice Quantaloc's energy patterns shifted to deep contemplation. You're proposing we don't change the humans at all? Humans are effective advocates precisely because they're intense, emotional, and physically expressive, Foxhammer replied, handicapping them. The armor lets both species operate at full capacity. The chamber buzzed with animated discussion as judges considered this revolutionary approach. Instead of suppressing human nature, it would enhance their own ability to withstand it. Security Chief Kraktos shifted in his reinforced chair, its own battle-scarred carapace reflecting the overhead lights. The training requirements would be extensive. Bailiffs would need specialized equipment and combat-level physical conditioning. Already designed the curriculum, Foxhammer replied, activating another display. And threat assessment. Physical conditioning to handle proximity to human emotional states. Equipment training for kinetic dampening, sonic absorption, and electromagnetic shielding. The training program was impressive in its thoroughness. Candidates would learn to recognize the early signs of human emotional escalation, understand the cultural context behind human legal advocacy, and master the complex technology required to safely interact with humanity's most passionate representatives. Graduates would be qualified to handle anything from a human sneeze to a full courtroom breakdown, Foxhammer concluded. They'd be the bridge between human intensity and galactic sensitivity. The debate that followed was intense but ultimately one-sided. The evidence was overwhelming. The armored bailiff protocol offered a path forward that protected alien safety while preserving human rights. The vote, when it came, was close, but eventually unanimous. The Galactic Judicial Council approved the armored bailiff protocol, marking the first time in galactic history that an entire species would be accommodated rather than restricted. As the session concluded, Foxhammer stood quietly at the back of the chamber, watching as centuries of legal tradition adapted to embrace humanity's unique place in the galaxy. 1 year had passed since the Galactic Judicial Council's historic decision in Courtroom 7 on Nexus Prime had been completely transformed. The space now resembled a high-tech fortress designed for interspecies harmony. Reinforced furniture made from military-grade composites stood ready to withstand the most passionate human gestures, while nearly invisible sonic dampeners hummed quietly in the walls, ready to filter dangerous frequencies before they could reach sensitive alien ears. The most striking change was the presence of 3 imposing figures, flanking the human section. The armored bailiffs stood like technological guardians, their ceremonial armor gleaming under the courtroom's adaptive lighting. Each suit was a masterpiece of defensive engineering, kinetic absorption matrices, electromagnetic field generators, and sonic modulation systems, all working together to create a protective barrier between human intensity and alien fragility. Today would be the ultimate test of the new system. The case of Colony Terra versus the Galactic Environmental Council had drawn attention from across the galaxy. Earth's finest legal team was defending human colonists accused of deliberately damaging the ecosystem of Kepler 442b, a pristine world that had taken millions of years to develop its unique biodiversity. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the prosecution won, 12 human colonies would be forced to evacuate, sending millions of people back to an already overcrowded Earth. Worse, it would set a precedent that could end human expansion into the galaxy forever. Lead attorney Zhang. Haijin stood at the defendant's table, her confident posture radiating the kind of determination that had once terrified alien observers. Today, however, her every movement was monitored by Bailiff Prime Voxhammer and his specially trained team. The massive Kithran warrior had personally overseen the development of the protective protocols, and his presence gave both species the confidence they needed to proceed. Across the courtroom, the prosecution team sat nervously. The Altarian environmental lawyer kept shifting his aurora-like form, while his crystalline co-counsel vibrated at frequencies that indicated deep anxiety. They were still adjusting to sharing a courtroom with humans, even with the new safety measures in place. Judge Valthari presided over the proceedings, his crystalline form now bearing decorative golden veins where he had been reconstructed after the original Park Minho incident. Those repairs had become a symbol throughout the galaxy, evidence that even the most traumatic encounters could lead to something beautiful. Your Honor, Zhang, Haijin began, her voice carrying the full force of human conviction. All the words that would have once shattered crystal and ruptured containment fields were now carefully modulated by the sonic dampening systems, delivered at comfortable levels while preserving every ounce of emotional impact. The prosecution would have you believe that human colonists deliberately damaged Kepler-4 for 2b's ecosystem. This is not just false, it's an insult to the environmental consciousness that has driven human space exploration for generations. For the first time in galactic legal history, an alien jury could hear human passion without terror. The crystalline jurors, no longer worried about harmonic disruption, began leaning forward with interest. The Etherean observers found themselves genuinely engaged with the human advocate's emotional appeals. As the trial progressed, something unprecedented began to happen. The alien jury started responding positively to human intensity, recognizing it as genuine conviction rather than predatory aggression. The first breakthrough came when human colonist Oh Sang-woo took the witness stand. His testimony about protecting endangered alien wildlife was delivered with such heartfelt emotion that several jury members began weeping their tears. Carefully collected by microdrones to prevent contamination of the courtroom environment, we didn't come to Kepler-4 to be as invaders. Oh Sang-woo testified, his words filtered through the advanced Bailiff systems. Before we even unpacked our first shelter, we spent 2 full years studying every creature, every plant, every microorganism on that world. We established protected reserves larger than our own settlements. The prosecution had expected to present evidence of human environmental destruction, but witness after witness told a different story. Human scientist Kang Mina presented research, showing how human agricultural techniques had actually increased biodiversity on Kepler-4 to b, through symbiotic farming methods that worked with alien soil organisms rather than against them. Our children grow up knowing the names of 50 native species, testified another colonist. Human kids can identify the mating calls of Kepler songbirds and know which plants are sacred to the local ecology. We're not destroyers, we're protectors. The courtroom buzzed with amazement rather than terror as the evidence mounted. For the first time, aliens were seeing humans as they truly were, not monsters, but passionate beings who cared deeply about preserving the beauty they found among the UT. They found among the UT stars. The turning point came during closing arguments. Zhang Hijin, protected by her bailiff escort, delivered an impassioned speech that would have been impossible under the old system. Her voice rose with genuine emotion, her gestures emphasized key points, and her intensity filled the courtroom. With the raw power of human advocacy, all safely contained and modulated by the protective systems, we came to the stars not as conquerors, but as gardeners, she declared, her words carrying unprecedented emotional weight to the alien audience. Every human colony is a testament to our commitment to coexistence, not domination. Look at our actions, not your fears. Judge us by what we've built, not what you imagine we might destroy. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours, a remarkably short time for such a complex case. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous: not guilty on all charges, but more than that. They commended the human colonists for their environmental leadership and recommended them as a model for future interspecies settlement projects. As the verdict was read, something historic happened in that courtroom. For the first time since humans had joined galactic civilization, aliens had experienced human intensity as inspiration rather than intimidation. The Etherian judge approached the Bailiff station after the proceedings, requesting permission to personally thank the human legal team, an unprecedented gesture of respect. Bailiff Prime Boxhammer removed his helmet and smiled at Zhang Haijin. As the courtroom began to empty, how did it feel to practice law without holding back? She grinned, still energized from the victory and the breakthrough it represented. Like being human again. Thank you for making that possible. 6 months. Later, the Armored Bailiff Academy held its first graduation ceremony. Representatives from 47 species attended, witnessing the emergence of a new generation of court officers trained specifically for human-compatible justice. The Academy's motto, engraved in dozens of languages across the entrance, captured the spirit of the new era, protecting justice from humanity's enthusiasm, one court case at a time. The statistics told an incredible story of transformation. In the year since the protocol's implementation, there had been 0 injuries, 0 evacuations, and a 94% satisfaction rate from alien participants in human-involved cases. Even more importantly, conviction and acquittal rates had normalized. Humans were finally receiving fair trials. Alien witnesses were no longer too terrified to testify effectively. Chief Justice Quantalic delivered the graduation address, his ancient wisdom reflecting on the journey from fear to understanding. Today marks not just the success of an innovative program, but the triumph of accommodation over segregation. We learn that justice isn't served by making everyone the same, it's served by making everyone equal. The ceremony concluded with a demonstration trial that would have been unimaginable just 2 years earlier. Human attorney Shin Hae-won passionately defended a fictional client, while armored bailiffs calmly maintained order. The audience of new graduates watched in amazement as human intensity and alien sensitivity coexisted in perfect harmony, as the graduates prepared for their assignments across the galaxy. One thing was absolutely clear: the age of humans accidentally terrorizing alien courtrooms was over. The age of truly universal justice had begun. The end.